Hello, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well. It's Friday, and we are looking forward to Shabbos of Parshat Tavo. We begin with a question. What is it that makes all of us feel connected, feel Jewish, feel that we are of those who serve Hashem on a regular day-to-day basis? So it is those mitzvos that the rabbis instituted that fill our lives. Brachos, davening, coming to shul as part of our daily or weekly schedule, studying parts of the Torah. These are the regular mitzvahs besides for the high points in the year that keep us connected, that bring spirituality into our lives, into our homes. But the question is, in the days of the Torah, in the days of Tanakh, almost all of this did not yet exist. They did not have brachos, they did not have our Shemona Esrei, they did not have much of our davening. They didn't have shuls and shul communities like we do. They did not have yet much of the Torah that we study. They certainly did not yet have Daf Yomi. So on a regular day-to-day, week-to-week rhythm of their lives, what made them feel Jewish? What made them feel connected, especially if they are not living in Yerushalayim in the shadow of the Beis HaMikdash? And the answer is, in the days of Tanakh, the regular typical Jew was connected to the land. He or she gardened, had crops, was a farmer. And thus, the main connection to their spirituality, to the Torah, to Hashem, were the mitzvos connected to the land, and especially the separations and gifts that they were obligated to distribute to the appropriate people. And so there was Truma, the gift to the Kohen, and Meiser, the gift to the Levi, which kept them connected to the Kohen and Levi, to the Beis HaMikdash from afar, to those who were teaching Torah in their communities. There was Meiser Sheni of some years in the 7-year Shemitah cycle, the second tithing that they had to bring and eat in Jerusalem, which would keep them connected to Yerushalayim. There was Meiser Ani in the other years, the tithing that would go to the poor. There were other gifts to the poor, Leket, Shechum, Peah, the sheaves, the crops, the produce that would be dropped on the ground that were forgotten, the corner of the field. And so in all of these ways, they were working in the field. That's where they were connected, and it was infused with spirituality, with mitzvahs connecting them to Hashem, connecting them bein adam l'chaver, a person to another human being, to his or her fellow. And it was with these separations also that presumably they would daven. The first fruit would bud, they would run, they would see it, they would tie the red string around it, set aside that it would ultimately be brought to the Beis HaMikdash, and the person would, in his or her own words, daven, Hashem, let this continue to be a good year's crop. When they would separate their Truma and Meiser, they would be thinking, let this be a blessing for my work this year. They would separate the Truma, and then they would have this holy produce in their house that they would have to protect. They have to make sure they would not violate its purity. Ultimately give it to a Kohen. Again, bringing spirituality into their lives, into their homes in a very tangible way. And that's what kept a person connected. All of these mitzvahs connected to the land and to what grows. And it's in this week's Parsha that the Torah commands that every 2 years in the 7-year Shemitah cycle, on the last day of Pesach, in the 4th and 6th year, a person was obligated to make an accounting and then proclaim a declaration called Vidui Meiser, the confession, proclamation of the tithings, to make sure that over the past 3 years that he or she had actually followed the halachos, had separated everything that needed to be separated, and had delivered them to the proper people or proper locations. And this was not just meant to be an accounting of the dollars and cents of the money, although that was also necessary because you can see it was quite a complex system and many laws, many things to keep track of. It was not just meant to be an accounting in that way. It was meant to be a moment for a person to reflect on all of these mitzvos, which were again the basis of their day-to-day spiritual lives, their connection to Hashem. An opportunity to think about that, how they had served Hashem, how they had contributed to the Jewish community, how they had supported Torah and Torah study, and the Beis HaMikdash. And the Torah says, "Va'amarta lifnei Hashem Elokecha," and you will say, you will go through this accounting to make sure that you had fulfilled all the mitzvos, not forgotten any details, and you will make this declaration Lifnei Hashem Elokecha, before the Lord your God. And in context, this certainly has the connotation of meaning that the person will make this declaration on the grounds of the Beis HaMikdash, of the temple, as Lifnei Hashem, before God, means in many other contexts, many other verses in the Torah. The question, though, is, why does this need to be proclaimed in the Beis HaMikdash? Again, almost all of the gifts are things unrelated to the Beis HaMikdash. The gifts of the Kohen and Levi would be given in the local community. Certainly the gifts of the poor would be given in the local community. Why make this proclamation in the Beis HaMikdash? The Rashbam explains, Hashem commanded that this should be proclaimed before God, in His presence, in the Beis HaMikdash. Ki yavush l'shaker lifnei Kadosh Baruch Hu. A person will be embarrassed, literally translating, to lie before God. Hashem wanted this to be an honest accounting, again, both in terms of the dollars and cents, but also a deeper accounting of ourselves and our spiritual lives. If it was just words to be rattled off at home, it would not motivate the person to really think as Hashem wanted the person to think. To make such a proclamation, I fulfilled your mitzvahs, I have not forgotten anything, I've kept my responsibilities, I've served you, Hashem, to say that in the Beis HaMikdash, that will, at the very least, inhibit the person from lying, but hopefully motivate the person to really take the opportunity to make a real spiritual accounting, to turn to Hashem, and to connect or to reconnect. There is a halachic machlokas on this detail of the mitzvah. The Rambam writes, Mitzvah so b'mikdash. The proper way to fulfill this mitzvah of making the proclamation is in the Beis HaMikdash. However, if a person can't make it to Beis HaMikdash, to Yerushalayim, im hisfada b'chol makom yatsa. If you recite this confession, the recitation, wherever it may be in any city in Israel, you have fulfilled the basic mitzvah. The Ravid, Rabbeinu Avram ben David, who wrote glosses on the Rambam soon after it was written, comments on this halacha. Zeh shibush, this is incorrect. Shahavidoi eino el lifnei Hashem. The Torah itself says that the confession, the recitation, must be performed before God. Ve'ein lifnei Hashem ela babayis. And is only considered that one is standing before God if he's on the grounds of the temple. Ravid has a good point. The Torah says, Lifnei Hashem. How can the Rambam say that, if necessary, you can recite this anywhere? Rav Yosef Kairo, the author of the Shulchan Aruch, also wrote a commentary on the Rambam called the Kesef Mishnah. Here, as in other places, he defends the ruling of the Rambam, really quoting an early interpreter, and explains as follows, that obviously the Rambam maintains that although the ideal place to feel the presence of Hashem, to fulfill the verse which requires this to be recited, Lifnei Hashem, before God, is in the Beis HaMikdash. However, Kol Makom Havi Lifnei Hashem. Any place can be considered before God. Shashchina B'chol Makom. God's presence resides anywhere, everywhere, wherever a person decides to stand before Him. The ideal Lifnei Hashem is in the Beis HaMikdash. But a person can concentrate, can focus, can draw Hashem's presence down, and can stand Lifnei Hashem before God, wherever he or she may live. And so ideally, a person should travel to Yerushalayim to make this accounting, to reflect on their spiritual lives, to think about how they've been fulfilling the mitzvahs and serving Hashem. But if necessary, a person can fulfill this technical mitzvah of vid or maestros wherever he or she may be. A person can stand Lifnei Hashem wherever he or she may be, and can present to Hashem a true, deep, honest accounting of their spiritual lives. We are approaching Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, and hopefully some of these ideas resonate and their connections are obvious. We hope to, on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, stand before Hashem And the greatest thing that we can present to him is our sincerity, is an honest presentation of ourselves. The pasuk says in Ashrei, Karov Hashem l'chol karav, Hashem is close to anyone who calls out to him, l'chol asher yikruhu be'emet, anyone who calls out in truth, truthfully, sincerely, honestly. Obviously to the exclusion of someone just saying words without thinking, but even more than that, someone who has reflected beforehand and has some piece of them to present to Hashem, whether it's a regret or a request, but who opens up, who is honest, who is true, who is sincere, who is coming be'emet. And so we have 2 weeks until Rosh Hashanah. That's not a lot of time, and those 2 weeks will fly by before we know it. So let us, like the farmer who would prepare, who could not just rattle off the accounting, would have to look at the books, would have to make sure, have I actually separated everything? Have I actually given everything to the Kohen, to the Levi, to the poor? So let us take this time to find time to reflect, to make an accounting, to think about what we want to daven for next year, to think about what we want to ask for forgiveness, to think about where we want to focus to grow. And let us approach Hashem. Let us stand before him on Rosh Hashanah. Let us stand lifnei Hashem. He will be here wherever you are, in Brookline or elsewhere, in whatever minyan you'll be davening. If you want to, you'll be standing lifnei Hashem. Let us all call out to him, be'emet, so we will fulfill the pasuk, Karov Hashem l'chol karav, that we will know that he will be close to us, he will hear our tefillos, and he will grant us a good and sweet new year.